Hey everybody, it's Jane Johnston with the Briar Hill Group at Remax Camosun, co-host of He Said, She Said, They Said with...
Hey everybody, it's Andrew Plank with LePage. Welcome back yet to another week of whatever this is.
It's August. How did it go?
August.
How did it go last week without me around?
I thought it was okay. I mean, it was actually probably better.
It was better without me?
Actually, because I've never hosted before and I've never had the keys to the kingdom in the past with all the tools and such. It was a little awkward, but we had Danielle, your assistant, in the background helping out, and Jen was a great guest, and I think it went okay.
Good.
So, yeah, we had fun.
Good. And how's your...
missed you though.
Aw, thank you. How's your week going?
So far, so good. Out there showing lots of properties. Got some listings coming up. Trying to get, some good recreation, personal time in as well. And just balance, it's all about balance.
I was supposed to go, I have my renos happening. Can you hear that?
Nope.
Okay, good.
Yes, I can.
I had...
Just talk. It's all fine. It's not that loud.
I was supposed to go rowing on Sunday, but I had an offer in on a property and ended up being multiples. We put an offer in on Friday. We had to wait 48 hours. What's interesting, I do some work with personality science.
Right.
And
do you want to name that that program that you often refer to in terms of people being high knowledge and
Codebreaker Technologies.
Codebreaker Technologies.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's essentially about understanding people's personalities and how they buy and sell. And I work with, I train people on how to be more effective communicators and speak in a way that makes sense for their clients.
Right. Yeah.
And anyway, the buyer, one of my buyers was a high blueprint, and he did not like the fact that they changed the rules on him, which they didn't. But he said,
He
"Well,
perceived it as that."
Yeah. So what? So what people were doing before this, is, as you know, they were delaying offers for 3 or 4 days and saying, bring in your offer, and then
meaning when we had and we still have a pretty vibrant market, but there's less inventory. But when we had really a lot of activity, people didn't want to undersell their homes. So the strategy was, yes. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I like to over-explain things for our listeners.
Okay. Kenneth is saying I need less trouble, and I don't know how to do that. I'll try. Maybe my voice. Anyway, he got really upset with the fact that the rules changed, and so I had to explain to him that because now we're not quite sure what's happening with the market, instead of doing the offers here and everybody knowing, like, in 4 days we're going to look, what we're doing is getting the offers and asking people to just wait while we try and encourage other buyers. And it means it's still a seller's market, but it's not a fun seller's market.
Well, the thing that nobody likes feeling played, and people say, oh, why are sellers doing this? Well, sellers don't want to sell their homes for less than they actually could. And in a market where it's really difficult to say this is where the value is, that's strategy made a lot of sense. But what I've really appreciated as an agent, where we, often there are so many things, always a changing target, always the rules underlying things are changing because people, we are making an offer on a property and then we're the only person in making that offer. And then suddenly there's 3 other people and you're going back to your clients and making all kinds of changes. In the past, you could kind of line things up. In the past, in that heavy market, it was really busy, but at least you had consistency, and you could say, okay, we're going to look at offers Tuesday at 6. And so we can continue looking at properties, we can get prepared, and we can put all our ducks in a row and get ready for Tuesday at 6. And now it's back to, oh, there's a property listed. We better get in there as soon as we possibly can, see it as soon as we can, get an offer prepared as soon as we can, get it into play as soon as we can. And it means that, yes, if you plan to go rowing, and then something comes up where the goalposts have changed, they've moved them, you need to adapt to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's especially hard, like I find for people who are wanting to know if they're going to follow the rules, and then they feel they feel like they can't trust the process.
I played by your rules and I got screwed. So yeah, and the problem is the one rule is there are guidelines, but there are rules, but there are no real hard and fast rules.
Yeah. And anyway, when the buyer said, I hope that you like, why don't you just push it through? And I'm like, well, they've already got a second offer right now, so I can't push it through. They're just going to tell us to go away.
What do you mean push it through? Push through an offer that was
like, say, I want them to accept this offer right away.
Oh yeah, you've got no leverage. This is all about leverage. So when someone's making, if you're making an offer and you're the only person offering and the property's been on market for 3 months, you might have some leverage. But if you're first day on market, the sellers have 20 showings lined up for the next day and are told that there are 3 offers coming in. It's pretty hard to say, here's our offer, take it or leave it.
Yeah.
Because they know it's not the best they're going to get.
What's interesting is just that the price point was just under $2 million. And so just for people to understand that there's still, when we were looking at the statistics, statistically, houses at that price are actually going under asking.
Yeah.
But if a house is beautifully renovated and it's done, then people are still going to pay premium dollars for that. I don't know what it ended up going for. So we'll find out.
Statistics are great for telling you where a property value might land, but you can't say on average properties are going 5% under. Well, you can say on average properties are going 5% under asking price in the $2 million price point or 10% or whatever. But what you can't say is this individual house will definitely go 10% under, because this individual house could have been priced low and is worth $300,000 more than is being asked.
Right.
And the average is this, but we go through this all the time. We go through this with assessed value, assessed value as well, appraisals. Value is what the sellers and buyers are willing to pay for it. Hey, so what are we talking about today? We're going to talk a little bit about some of the stats, and then maybe we'll talk a little bit about Strata and how stratas tend to manage their ownership in terms of restrictions and uses. And
yeah, so it came up on the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
It came up on the weekend where I had a buyer looking at a property. It was a Bearland strata, and I had to explain to them that the Strata Property Act has basic bylaws and rules that people require and are required to use, and they default to these. And so, but first, let's just go and look at what's happening with the market to date.
And we'll circle back on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to take the top and I'll take the bottom?
Sure.
Okay.
So last year we had 979 sales. This year we had 354 to date. So 979 for the month of August, 354. New listings, 448 in the past 16 days, month to date, compared to 1333 last year. So we're low. And then active listings, we're at 1,289. That's compared to 2,584 last month, August of 2020. So we're down.
Still really low inventory. Yeah. And those numbers for August 2021 will definitely go up by end of month, but we're halfway through the month. And if you double those numbers, it's probably a fair assumption. We're still well under the sales and new listings that we saw in 2020, which is odd because we have less restrictions in the market due to COVID, and you'd think more people would be listing their homes, but it doesn't seem to be happening that way. I think people are. I mean, my pet theory is that people are just deciding to wait and enjoy life a little bit and rather than having people tromping through their home, regardless of COVID. They just want to go to the beach or the lake or what have you.
I think people are tired, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I also find that even though we're low on inventory, we have low interest rates. I'm finding people are being a little more picky than they were last year, and perhaps not seeing the potential of the market rising. So that's why it's less busy.
I think that we all feel that way, and we all could be very, very wrong. And when I say we all, I mean just on average, I guess. I don't know, but it feels like, okay, things have been going up for so long and so hard. It kind of like, it can't go much further. It can't go much further. People have said that for years, though. It tends to reach more of a plateau but it does feel like kind of, well, maybe the heat's a little bit off. Maybe we can afford to wait. And the funny thing is when that happens and the inventory goes up, they continue to wait and wait and wait, and they wait too long. And they wait until suddenly prices are going up and there's competition and all of that other stuff again, when I think the plateau in the selection is the best time ever to buy. So you can get a great home. Right now you can get an okay home without, and you only viewed it for 30 minutes before you can actually make, one viewing before making a showing, an offer and so forth. Anyway, let's talk about where things are at in the last week. So in the last week, we've had 199 new listings with 194 listings going pending. So we're still seeing it's a pretty close, almost equal listing to going pending ratio, almost 1-to-1 there. 43 price decreases. So we're still seeing that properties are listing and actually not getting their price, and people are having to make some adjustments. 6 price increases. That does happen from time to time, either through someone's made an error in their original listing, or they're trying a new strategy, or they underpriced it to try to generate some offers. They didn't get them in the first week or something. They didn't have people come to the table, and they've decided, okay, well, we don't actually want to sell for this price, so we're going to increase our price. Anyway, 2 back on market. 242 sold. We've talked about that before. Again, that's just what has completed at the law offices and land title office. 16 actually expired. So 16 properties did not sell, expired. They're either relisted under a new contract and part of that new listing above, or the folks have changed their minds, and 3 withdrawn. So
right, and sometimes the withdrawals are happening because people are wanting to. They've decided they want to reprice their house or something. So rather than do a price reduction, they may just actually withdraw. Okay, so I'm just going to look here so I want to show you guys this window here. This is a Strata Property Management Act. So what I was telling Andrew earlier is that when you buy into a bare land strata, you don't necessarily
Before we go any further, let's just do a really quick talk about strata. Like, you're saying bare land strata. I don't know if people understand what that means. So
okay, so so anytime you share a wall, like if you have a side-by-side house, that's a strata. Anytime you're living in a condo, that's a strata. Townhouse, that's a strata. But you also have a strata if you share a road or maybe a common septic field and the pipes leading to that septic field. So when you do, and I have a situation where that's the case right now, then if you don't have any rules, you actually still do have rules, and they are the standard bylaws and rules by the Strata Property Act.
It's really common to see this in duplexes, where someone buys one side of a duplex, and people don't understand that is actually falls under the Strata Property Act. If there's a strata plan applied, and they say, oh, but there's no bylaws. There's no bylaws. And yes, there are. There are these standard bylaws.
Right. So, and it says the Strata Corporation must have bylaws. And this is the reason for it is so that people have a common understanding or a starting place of how they're going to be working and living beside one another.
It's essentially a form of government. I mean, you form a strata for this shared ownership and management of these shared assets, and then over time people make changes to the rules, and those rule changes might limit or restrict how you can use that property. And the intention is for the betterment of everyone, but it does mean that it restricts, if you're, looking for a home and you've got 3 cats and 2 dogs, you're going to have a hard time probably buying in a strata, because
Right.
usually there are restrictions on pets. It's
Right.
uncommon to find something that doesn't.
And municipalities also have restrictions on those. So there's
Yeah.
can be certain areas, like I think
Layers.
you're not allowed more than 3 dogs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a bylaw that restricts the age. So that's one of the restrictions, can be age, that says it does not apply to people who reside in the strata lot at the time that the bylaw is passed and who continue to reside. So they are grandfathered.
Grandfathered. Yeah.
Yeah.
I sold recently a condo where the originally had not been age restricted. I think it had been. They sometimes have language in their bylaws which just say it's adult oriented, which is not anything legally enforceable. It's just to let people know that they prefer to keep it an adult oriented building, but there's no legal standing in that. But these folks bought this place for the daughter, and daughter moved in and was younger and had some friends coming to live with her and roommates and this and that. And I guess the ownership realized that they didn't really like this. So next thing you know, there was a 25-year age limit installed into the strata. And of course, this person could still continue to live in this unit and continue to be there because they were grandfathered. But the moment that unit is sold, it can't be sold to someone who's going to have an under 25 living in there.
Yeah, and I just want to say that what that does is it restricts the market, and it also restricts your financing, because CMHC has a problem with that, because all of a sudden you're taking, about a quarter of the market out.
Yeah, you're restricting. If you have, exactly, if you have folks who either have kids or want to have kids, or they're under 25 and have, family money coming, let's say if that was the age restriction, you're not going to be able to sell to those folks. And so there may be a small subset of the market that says, well, I only want to buy in a property that does not have kids because I hate kids. That might be what you get. And so you might get a bit of a bump in that small subset section, but it's not going to equal by any means the number of folks you're going to lose. And when you add that to, when you add pet restrictions, and maybe they don't allow barbecues, maybe they do allow smoking. What's the other major one? I'm blanking. Rentals. Rentals
Right.
is another one that's really common to see as a restriction.
And then the other one are dogs and cats. So the basic rules are 1 dog and 1 cat. And a lot of people move in, they have 2 cats. And so all of a sudden now, so this is the case on the weekend, we were looking. I talked to the neighbor. I said, hey, so I'm just wondering what your rules around dogs and cats are. And he goes, well, we don't have any rules around dogs and cats. And actually, in this case, what they'd done was they had a building scheme instead of strata bylaws. Mm-hmm. And the building scheme said stuff like how many people could park and whether or not they could have RVs and all of that.
Very common.
So, but when we were looking for bylaws, nobody had them. So, but as a result, because they had no bylaws and these people had 2 cats, they couldn't buy in there because it wasn't established. So it's really, really important that you get these things set up. Yeah.
And a lot of people don't understand, they may buy a property through, privately or through without representation. They don't understand. They think, this says 1 cat and 1 dog, and I've got 2 cats. It's really important to me that I keep these 2 cats. But I've talked to Sally, who's the strata president, and she said, oh, it's fine. No problem. I can come in with my 2 cats. And you would think, and most people might think it's reasonable to expect that, well, I've got strata permission now, it's fine. But Sally is supposed to represent the entire ownership of that strata corporation. There might be 40 other owners in there. She doesn't have the authority to say it's fine. She has the responsibility to enforce the bylaws. So unless you can get, everyone really agreeing that we're going to change the bylaws or we're going to turn a blind eye, maybe it's a unit of, there's 4 units in a heritage conversion downtown. If you get all 4 owners to say, yeah, we got no problem with this, then maybe you don't have to worry about changing the bylaws, but you can't rely on just the strata council saying, yeah, I've got a letter from council. And people don't understand that. And they buy a lot of times under the assumption.
Right. And so actually what's happened in a case with the buyer for me was this was a 3-unit complex. They had 2 dogs,
Yeah.
well mannered dogs. They initially only allowed 1 dog. We actually had them go for a vote and we got it changed so that they could move in. And then the 1 dog ended up passing away anyway.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. That is hard though. That's a really hard hurdle to overcome because, you know, when a property comes up on market and you want to go through it as a buyer, as the buyer's agent, the strata has no responsibility to us, the buyer or the buyer's agent. They have a responsibility to the owner and the owners in the strata. And they, and same with the property management company. And when it comes to asking them to try to change those bylaws for us, you really have to get into a point where you've got an accepted offer. It's conditional on bylaw change. And then you have to get everybody together for a special, bylaws require like a special general meeting or an AGM for a change. So that's there's a lot that has to happen in order for that bylaw to get changed and then registered at Land Title Office.
Right. And they need, is it 75%?
75% for a bylaw change. It's not just a majority rule. So when you've got that level of, you know, when you've got that kind of level and in this kind of market where, you know, if I don't sell it to you, I'll sell it to you, I'll sell it to you. Somebody comes in and says, I want to buy your place, but I need to have 2 dogs. Somebody else says, well, I'll just buy it. Okay, it's sold.
Yeah. So it's really, it's a matter of where the shift is in the power of the market. So in a slow market, the seller will work with the buyer to see if they can actually change the rules and make things happen quickly. But in a seller's market, they won't do that. Yeah. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. And I just want to go back to we started this conversation talking about bare land stratas. And the thing is, what a lot of people, when you look at a house on a street, a lot of bare land stratas just look like a regular house, a regular single family dwelling. You wouldn't expect to come across bylaws in this kind of home where you buy it. Some of the hints might be it says private lane, or the, you know, it's a little cul-de-sac with all houses built in the same era. That's some hints that it's a bare land strata subdivision, as opposed to subdivided properties with individual city lots. But yeah, you've got to really look at this stuff because they look like apples and apples, but they're not. They're apples and oranges.
Well, and also just to confuse things, you have to look at the strata property plan, because sometimes it's showing the road and it shows the lots. That's a bare land strata, but sometimes it has the outline of the houses on those lots, and that means it's actually a townhouse. It's considered a townhouse.
It's more of a townhouse complex, yeah. So the real differentiator between a bare land strata and a townhouse or condo, pardon me, strata is that with a bare land strata, you buy that bare land only as part of a strata lot, and you share those other common bits. And so when you build something on it, you're responsible for its upkeep. You need a new roof, you pay for a new roof. You need new windows, you buy new windows. When this strata complex is made entirely, you buy a finished product and there's a house on it, and it's showing on the strata plan as the footprint of the house there, then that's part of what the whole strata that you're buying. And so the exterior walls and so on and so forth is all strata responsibility, and you're paying strata fees for that. And yeah.
So when we're looking at condos or houses, or I'm thinking 4/10s in Souk, which are 4 homes sharing 10 lots. They're actually townhomes there, but they don't run that way. So there's the culture of the community. There's also like the practicality of the community. And then looking at what's shared, we figure out if there is a strata fee, what the strata fee covers, and then looking at the bylaws. So interesting bylaw request came in on the weekend on our realtor group. Somebody's looking for a condo that allows smoking.
Right. Yes. There are still people out there who smoke, and it's getting harder for them to find a safe place to be a smoker. Yeah.
And so what I suggested was maybe sell them a mobile home, because I can't see a building allowing smoking, because it affects the price of homes.
There are still buildings that allow smokings inside the unit. You just have to really look at the smoking bylaws. And as you referred to earlier around the pets and so forth, if you buy it and they haven't made the change, then you're grandfathered. So we get into some really interesting points, though, where you agree to buy something and then the bylaws change in between where you've agreed to purchase it and your completion on it, and where you're the owner and therefore grandfathered. So that can get kind of interesting. You want to watch for these are the things that you want to be really careful about. And if there is that kind of thing, there's a requirement that there is I'm blanking on that. If there's a special assessment,
if there's any change in rules or bylaws, they have to notify. But if you're having like a regular closing, which is 2 months, 6 weeks to 2 months, or maybe 3 months.
You generally know when the AGM is, and if there's an SGM, they usually have to, and you'll get hints from reading the bylaws too, or sorry, the Strata minutes and the meeting minutes, because there'll be chatter, generally speaking, if they're talking about doing something like this, or there'll have been maybe some past votes on past AGMs. So there's hints, but yeah, it's just a small risk. It's just something to be aware of.
So what can happen if you're not following the rules is you can get fined, and I've seen fines as high as $500.
Mm-hmm.
And
they can be cumulative and repetitive. Yeah.
Yeah. So for every time there's a complaint, so it would be noise. This is actually
a complaint, Jane. There's a little loud behind you there.
Actually, one of the interesting bylaws is barbecues, whether or not barbecues are allowed, and people really need to check that out, because I just sold a unit where barbecue smell and barbecue noise, party noise, was an issue in a building, and it came up in the minutes, and the person who's buying won't mind that because they're young. The people who are selling are older, so it's going to be an issue for them. But
you can get a proxy sometimes, or you might be wanting to ask for a proxy if there's going to be a long time between when you've agreed to purchase it and your closing. Let's say there's, for some reason, 4 or 5, 6 months between when you've bought the place and the closing. You might want a proxy, at least, meaning that you get the opportunity to vote on behalf, as if you were the owner before you're the owner.
Yeah.
And have a say. I've had clients do that.
So other things that you can be fined for, other bylaws that they may have in a building, are things like whether or not you're leaving private stuff in your parking space, how you're storing your car, whether or not you have an insured car or uninsured car. These are all things that come up. They want your cars to be of good repair if they're going to be sitting on, especially a Bearland Strata, and insured. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been working with some folks who are looking for RV parking. Really, it's parking for their truck, but they happen to have a camper on it. And so it gets into that gray zone. Is this an RV, or is this their everyday vehicle? Because it's the vehicle they own, but it's got a 10-foot, it's 10 feet with the camper on it. And a lot of these townhouse complexes we're looking at have restrictions on RVs. And so it's very frustrating, because the intent is generally not to have the 30-foot RV that's, parked there all the time. But if it didn't have this camper on it, it would be fine. But the camper makes it an RV. We're having a lot of trouble with that.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking, sometimes what they do is they say no RVs, or let's say they have a nobody under the age of 19. They say, but you have an exception for a couple of weeks during the year. So you are allowed to be on there, or have that happening, but not over a certain amount of time.
Yeah, and that's a confusion for some folks, where it says, nobody under 16 years old. And they're like, well, my grandkids want to come by and visit. You mean they can't come on the property? My mother-in-law with her little poodle wants to come and visit. Does that mean the poodle can't be here? Well, they can't live there. You got to look at the Strata bylaws, and you've got to be reasonable. Reading through the minutes, Do you see that the folks in this strata are fining everybody for everything because they've they've left a small mess up? Or are they kind of getting along and reasonable? This is group ownership. So who are these people you're buying into a place with?
Yeah.
So do they like their rules and do they enforce them? It's nothing worse than a place that has a lot of rules that they're actually not enforcing. It just creates confusion.
So one of the things that's in this Property Act is the denial of access to recreational facilities. So if somebody is not abiding by the rules, the Strata Corporation actually may disallow an owner or a visitor or an occupant access to the recreational facility if they're contravening the bylaw or rule. And so where this may be the case is, let's say you have a pool or a hot tub and people are going and using it outside the regular hours, like 11 o'clock at night or whatever, and they're disturbing other people. It's always the bad behavior which causes these rules to come into effect, I find.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when I was a teacher, my students would say, Miss Johnston, why are you doing that? I'm like, I'm not doing it. You're doing it. I'm reacting to you doing it.
Yeah. So. Right.
But anyway, it's just interesting to me. It's really a choice. The other thing is what a strata does for you on a positive note is that it maintains a quality of life of how you want your life. So for those stratas that say no kids allowed, they're saying that because they don't want any noise. Or if they're saying I'm just trying to think, things like laundry, the time of laundry that you do your laundry
management. Yeah. And those are reasonable and understandable kind of bylaws. And then certainly I find the age restrictions are an interesting one. Rentals is a big one. You get a different mix in a building if it's allows rentals versus doesn't allow rentals. And there are buildings downtown now that they might be zoned for short term, but they don't allow short term rentals. There's all kinds of subtleties to these. But if you buy a place, here's the thing though, you might buy a place and think, I don't plan to have kids, but you're a young couple and then a kid comes along. You're going to have to sell your place if they're not going to change the rules. And there are examples of people who have bought into condo buildings and had children, and the strata has fined them repeatedly because they're in contravention. And you could buy a place also that allows children. Allows rentals. And you buy it to live in it, but you bought it because you want to maybe at some point in your life travel and have the option of renting. And then the bylaws change and you've lost that opportunity to rent it, and it affects your use and value. So you want to look at the mix in the building. If it already has quite a few rentals, it will probably continue to have a lot of rentals. Yes.
But you would be grandfathered in if you owned prior to that rule changing. But yes.
Rentals, well, yes and no. If you are not renting it when you own it and you're living in it, but you plan to rent it in the future because you want to go traveling, and they change the rules on you, you're not currently renting it, so you're not grandfathered. Now there are certain, it depends on the age. This gets into some subtleties. It depends on the age of the building and what the developer's disclosure statement says.
Yes.
But for certain buildings, you're not protected.
I think this all goes so a few thoughts. One is, first of all, get a property manager to help you because they should be aware of what standard bylaws and rules are regarding stratas, number one, and how they should be enforced and how your meetings should be run and what's reasonable and unreasonable. And then number two is talk to your realtor, because your realtor should be able to tell you what's going to affect your resale value and your investment. Like a lot of people have bought into transient accommodation in downtown Victoria. Yeah. But the fact is that in those cases, the bylaws allowed for it, or the zoning allowed for it, and then the bylaws changed. And so people then were no longer allowed to use the building for that purpose unless they were grandfathered in. And the reason why they changed those rules is because of the bad behavior of the people who were visiting, not because of the owners. Or maybe the owners weren't, monitoring it. But just ask those buildings actually that still have the transient accommodation, they have wide open pet rules and all this stuff, have great resale value, because if you look at the market, everybody fits into that market.
Yeah.
But an older condo which has a lot of rules, all of a sudden they're not allowing pets. All of a sudden they're not allowing people under the age of 45 and all this. It really shrinks the market.
Yeah, it's a very specified market, and you see a lot of 55 plus buildings, which are specialized, old
For
age
seniors. Yeah.
seniors, which we're getting close to. But you see a lot of those special buildings, and those tend to sell for less money. They tend to sell for, I'd say, a good 10% less at times. And so that's the real impact on value. It's great for you to buy, but when it comes time to sell, you've got limited market.
Right. So regarding standard pet stuff, rules, a reasonable number of fish or small aquarium animals. A lot of stratas actually don't like aquariums because if they burst, you're going to have a big issue.
Yeah, that and the water beds. There's usually a rule around water beds.
Small caged mammals. They stink.
They can be really smelly. Yes, we've talked. Yeah, 2 caged birds. So they're kind of looking at what's reasonable for somebody wanting pets, and you could, in theory, have, aquarium, some caged animals, 2 birds, a dog, or a cat, and you have a menagerie already. So it's not like this is super restrictive. It's just that I think a lot of people have 2 cats or 2 dogs, or they want a cat and a dog, and it can be hard when it only is one. But this is standard BC bylaws. These are you can just Google standard BC bylaws. You'll find these. This is the template that all other that bylaws begin with, and either the developer or the owners will then make changes either immediately upon the development or over time to these bylaws. And there may be a completely different set of bylaws right off the bat.
Yeah, I put the link in the chat if people want to go and look at them.
Yes, so that's exciting stuff.
Just be aware if you're interested, just to review those so you understand what you're getting into, and just understand that if somebody says there are no rules, there are, and especially if you buy into something that's less than 4 units where you're not required to follow, technically you still are under these schedule of basic strata bylaws.
Yeah. So we're probably going to wrap this up soon, but let's say there was a half duplex where someone ends up getting 5 dogs, and the other owner, they go to do a vote, and now you can't have 3/4 vote to change anything. It's half and half ownership. And then they want to complain to somebody, but they try to say, well, I'm going to fine you, neighbor. And the neighbor's going to say, no, screw you, blah, blah, blah. So what do? You've got to go then to tribunal, or you've got to escalate this. And I've never heard of this actually happening.
I have.
Your options. Yeah, have you?
So I had a client who lived in Vancouver in a 3-unit strata. So they could never have 75%. Same thing. It had to be unanimous for anything to pass. And one guy just refused to pass anything.
Yeah.
Anything.
I remember viewing a home it was a 3-unit conversion, and I thought, man, if the bylaws are exactly how you want them, this is perfect, because you can buy this and nothing can ever change without your say. Whereas if you have a heritage conversion with 4 units, then 3 owners can gang up on you and make any change they want. And same with a half duplex. As long as you've got a good neighbor and you can get everything set the way you like it, or it's already set, you're fine. But the minute if you want to make changes and they're not into it, there's no luck.
Right. So, important thing to realize here is just that you're buying into a community, and that you're, just understand, read the strata minutes. A lot of people just gloss over them, but you're really looking for the politics of what's happening in behind the scenes and understanding the tone of how people are communicating.
Yeah, minutes are like the diary of the strata. They talk about the business of it, but they also talk about, you get some of the scuttlebutt of what's been happening in the background and where there's been some issues or problems that help bring to light and identify maybe some issues. I've always felt like stratas, there's I don't know what the perfect number is, but too small a strata, and if your neighbors are great, it's wonderful, but if they're not great, it just highlights those discrepancies and changes. And then you get to a point where maybe there's 10 units in a strata, and it's maybe a little harder to generate enough income for the contingency reserve. And again, you get one or two bad apples, and it can really make your experience poor. But then you get a strata that maybe has it's a condo, it's got 40 units in it. Then at some point it starts to be that the consensus prevails. There's enough reasonable people together that you've got some good guidance for this. But you also have enough people volunteering for Strata Council and being able to sort of step in for these roles that are required as well. So these are all things to consider. But I mean, we're talking about bylaws and rules, but these things all evolve and come into play based on what is the makeup of the owners and how many owners, who are they, and what's their personalities. So all important things.
Exactly. So I was going to load up a picture, but I don't have it ready. I just wanted to remind people to please subscribe to our YouTube pages. We would love for you to follow us. Andrew's now streaming this on his YouTube page. And if you have any questions about real estate, please feel free to contact us. Andrew, how do people get in touch with you?
You can reach me, smoke signal, phone, knock on my door. I'll give you the address. You can call me 250-360-6106. Email info@andrewplank.com. Check out my website. Lots of resources there at andrewplank.com.
Okay. And if you need to get in touch with me, my name is Jane Johnston. I'm with the Briar Hill Group at RE/MAX Camosun. You can get in touch with me, 250-744-0775, or you can reach me at briarhillgroup.com. briarhillgroup@gmail.com, and I have two websites. One is briarhillgroup.com, which talks about real estate in Victoria, and the other one, vancouverislandtime.com, which talks about neighborhoods and choosing where you want to live and meeting local people who live in that neighborhood. So thank you.
Excellent.
So we're here every Monday morning at 10 a.m. Please subscribe, as I said. If you want to follow us on social media, you can follow our pages, our personal pages, as well as our personal profiles.
Sounds good. Thanks, everyone, for coming and watching, and those who are watching this on the recorded version. And we'll see you next week.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Be good.
You be good.